Hi, if you're unfamiliar with me, I'm Dex Gelfand. I'm a spiritual therapist, a spiritually based therapist, I guess you could say. I call my practice therapeutic spiritual counseling. I've been very, very successful through the years, evolving my practice, learning new things, improving, enhancing, becoming more effective, running and going deeper into things with much success. I've always been able to help my clients to overcome anxieties, depression, fear, and shock, much more so than you often would expect would happen. My clients tend to be, at least I could say, surprised, if not very frequently amazed, at how much change they have and how well they succeed at completely resolving things that seem to have been in and with them forever, struggling with those things, those fears, those anxieties, certain emotional and attitudinal tendencies getting in their way. And what I want to speak about in this video, which I haven't spoken about much, if at all, is increasingly with my work and increasingly even more and more successfully, what I've come to integrate naturally into it is what you could call telepathy. It's become more and more frequent and common, and is happening throughout sessions now, where when you speak to me, I get impressions, I get exact feelings. I sometimes get particular moments that have occurred for you, images, words, and I reflect these back to you, to help you guide yourself really to where your feelings are taking you, to more precisely identify. And all of my clients, for some time now, have responded very, very well to this. Yes, that's exactly what it is. I'll say, like, a person will be speaking. Here's the image I'm getting. I'm getting this. Is this what it is? Yes, and that really is very helpful for my clients. They find it very, very helpful. It really facilitates their recognizing and processing what they need to recognize and process. So while for quite a while, many years now, I've done a very good job at defining the spiritual architectures, the mental mechanisms that affect us. You could see in my much earlier video the four spiritual architectures. But aside from all that I've applied from that in the form of specific techniques with specific steps that take a person through unraveling what they need to unravel and completely getting over and beyond things, resolving feelings of shock that have been with you ever since this thing or that thing happened, and anxieties that person has been struggling with for a long time. This aspect of recognizing exactly what the feeling is, what the moments when they've experienced it have been for them, clarifying things, has really, really facilitated this work. Not that it hasn't been very successful always, but always improving, always increasingly so. I very much believe in never deciding that you've got it all figured out, or that there's no room for improvement, or that I can't change my mind about how I view a certain emotional and mental mechanism or feeling. And this has always helped me to continue to always evolve to better, more efficient, and deeper running ways of resolving, recognizing and processing, and spiritually digesting those things that have stayed within us. I mean, a large part of all of these anxieties and fears is in that resistance to them. In terms of the telepathy, and let me say, telepathy I find to be an inexact term, but it's one that we recognize, so it's what I use. But it just, I'm getting your feelings, I'm getting your images, I'm getting your expressions, and because I don't have the resistance to any of these that you have built in to try and protect yourself from what you don't want to feel. Perhaps that helps me to clarify it with you. I first used this back when I was Scientology oriented. I'm most certainly not today anything like a practitioner of Scientology, for good reasons, for many reasons that you can see in many of my other videos. But when I was more aligned and oriented through using those procedures and techniques, Scientology involves the use of cans that serve as electrodes, electrical conductors that pass a very, very, very tiny amount of electrical current through you and back into this device with a dial and a needle that's basically registering the resistance to that current coming through. It's not enough that you're normally going to feel it at all. I haven't used this in so many years for good reasons, but the point of that was and is that those changes in resistance are an expression and reflection of your own feelings arising in you that you have a lot of resistance to because they're fearful or painful or not. The changes in resistance is measuring changes in what is expressing through you. To me, I think the only valid use of it might be to help a person to, in the process of training, to recognize what's happening inside a person, how their reactions express. But as far as using it in a session, I certainly wouldn't do that. Haven't done that in probably more than a dozen years, way past that kind of thing. But in terms of telepathy, the point I'm making is there was a point where I actually used telepathy, which is I would hold the two electrodes in my hand and get your reactions, your resistance, your electrical changes telepathically. I didn't plan on doing this, but it happened long ago because I got a call from a friend and client who was very distraught. He was talking about he was considering taking his life, and he was too far away for me to have him come to me for a session. So I decided this idea of getting those reads, those electrodes, myself by holding the cans and getting what's happening within the other person while I'm holding the cans. This situation just called for that. I had to do something for this guy right away. And that's what I did. I told him, we're going to get on Skype in 10 minutes. I'm going to call you, and that's what we're going to do. And I did that. And I very successfully got every reaction. It was all valid. It all proved valid, what I did. That having been accomplished, and my attitude about it in that moment was, it's going to have to work because I really need it to work. So therefore, I just sort of a spiritual decision there. But that's the power we have, as all of us have, is, when we feel the need or desire or feel the freedom to use our natural abilities, spiritual or otherwise, then it just opens up. I don't believe for a second that I have any abilities you don't have or anybody doesn't have. But some of us, at this moment, it's more accessible than it is for others. So anyway, it's well accessible for me. And from that moment forward, for quite a while, when I still practiced in that paradigm Scientology, that's what I would do. I would hold the cans. The other person would be at the other end on their computer over Skype or FaceTime, whatever. And it just worked all the time. It just always worked. Certain moments stand out, like the moment I was working with one client, and I got a certain reaction showing up on the dial as I was holding the cans to get the person's reactions. That told me that there was something they were trying not to bring up, something they weren't comfortable having me know. And when this happens, it's important to get it out because it's getting in the way of their connecting with me and in the way of the progress of the session. So I asked for it a few times, and the person said, no, there's nothing there. But I kept seeing that I was still getting that same read going on. So that told me, no, I'm going to have to get this. So one more time I said, is there something you're not telling me? I think it was the first session I did with this client, and she started laughing. She said, I have no idea how this could possibly work, but it does. Yes, I didn't want to have to say this, and she came out with what it was. So again, that's the demonstration of telepathy is what I'm talking about. I remember even earlier, much earlier than that, in my Scientology former life, so to speak, and this was back like 1980, 81, and one of the earlier sessions I was giving somebody using the meter, and I was waiting for them to respond to something, in terms of get all of this, go through this incident that's coming to mind for you, some such direction that I'd given. And for a long time there was no response from the person. I did not want to interrupt their train of thought, but I wanted to check to see, is this registering with them? So I repeated the same direction to them, but not verbally, just purely mentally. I just can't explain. It just came to me to do this, right? I intended that exact same command in Scientology terms, that exact same direction to them, and boom, the needle just jumped the moment I did that. That 2 more times, each time, boom, the needle jumped. They were reacting to my telepathic communication expression to them. And I never ever did that again with a client like that, because I felt it was being invasive and maybe interrupting their train of thought. But in that moment, I just felt like I needed to check to make sure, are you with me? Are you reacting to this? So that's always been there, okay? The reason that I have a disagreement with the use of the term telepathy is, one thing I've come to understand, recognize, and feel some real basics of spiritual existence. And you could even just leave out the word spiritual and simply say existence. And one of them is that this physical world perception and projection of distance between us is just that. It's a projection, it's a projected perception. Spiritually, and actually, there is no there. There's only here. There is no them. There's only us. There's this usness. There's this collective consciousness, that this ocean that we are all part of. We are maybe drops, but we're in and part of all that same ocean. There's a here-ness. There's no separateness. There's no there-ness. That's all projection. So telepathy, the word tele, anytime you put the prefix T-E-L-E in front of a form of a word, you're talking about over a distance. And telepathy is actually closing that projected distance. It's a recognition of the here-ness of whatever is present in self and others, as there is only really an usness and only a presence of all here. So it's that ability to recognize and tap into that, which is the opposite of working through a distance. So that's why, to me, I would like to come up with a better term to use, and I probably could, but then I would have to explain it every time I used it. And I may or may not go that route. So for the sake of being understood, telepathy has become a very, very big part of my practice over the past several years. Another way that it shows up is that when you're speaking to me in a session about somebody else that's been part of your life or is part of your life, it just comes to me that I know things about the other person's intentions and feelings, and expressions that come through very clearly to me. And again, like I was saying earlier, maybe this is because I haven't built up the same discomfort and resistance with that other being that the client in front of me may have. So it's more accessible for me. I first noticed this happening in life with some people close to me, 1 or 2 people. They'd speak about somebody else, and boom, I would just know things. I would say to them something about that other person. They would go check it out, and it would always be right. It would always be true. It wasn't like I thought this was going on with them, or it always turned out I absolutely knew it. And this helps in sessions too, because a lot of what we're working through in sessions is about relationships, how we feel about others, how they feel about us, how we all need and want to recognize the love and togetherness with others, and how we are affected by the fear of not being connected with others, the fear of not being accepted, not being loved, not being part of the us, not being part of the togetherness, but being rejected, abandoned. And that's a very terrible, undesirable feeling that we have much resistance to. That's a lot of what we process. So a lot of times it comes up when we're doing a session that we're processing your connection you're having engaged with another person, a parent, a lover, a husband or wife, tends to be those things and other things as well. And I can always help the individual to really fully connect and feel that other person's presence here and now, and process through whatever the attitudes that have gotten in the way between you and that other person. I can sense so much about the other person, and that's very helpful in the session too. I use a technique I've developed called the presence technique, through which you can actually completely have and feel the other person's presence right here and now with you, and actually digest and process whatever has been, whatever discomforts, fears, anxieties, reactions had ongoingly been in the way of the relationship or the connection, whether or not that person is currently alive, so to speak, whether they've passed on or not. And that's a big part of the use of and recognition of and expression of what we call telepathy in the sessions. So besides using these techniques I've developed, it's a lot more than the mechanics. I've said a long time ago that good spiritual therapists, healers, they're not made, they're born. You have to have a certain love and empathy and really a desire to help the person through what they need to be helped through, and that makes for a wonderful connection and makes so much available, and that's a big part of it. So the point I wanted to make is that one thing that makes when I work with you so effective, and any of my clients over the past several years could tell you this. How did you know that? Yes, that's exactly what it is. I get that all the time, and it's just something to use. I would never use it in an invasive sense outside of the processing context, where I'm just helping the person develop what's within them to better recognize that. Outside of that, I never have used it socially. I've never had the desire to, because that would be invasive, and it's just a whole different context. But in the course of being a spiritual healer, therapist, guide, whatever term you like or are comfortable with, the point is that connection, that here-ness, that recognition of what's within you, able to notice and feel that and reflect that back to you to help you further allow it to emerge and develop through you. It's become a major tool in what I do. I've trained about somewhere between 15 and 20 practitioners so far over the past several years. And I would say, I don't know that I could train telepathy into a person, but I could I think successfully encourage you to recognize your ability to have this if you were somebody I trained to conduct a session. With my clients, it's very commonplace when it's appropriate. I'll have them completely notice, get, and feel the feelings coming from the other person in their life that is the topic of the session in the moment, and recognize exactly. I don't have the person ever work deductively. Well, it must be this, maybe it's that. No, I use certain questions in a session like, what problems the other person might solve, what feelings are they trying to solve or not have to feel in being this way with you. And so don't work deductively, allow it to come to you. Just let it come to you. Do not try to figure it out. It doesn't work that way. Welcome that person's presence, have those feelings, and it has always worked out. It's like you just need to be given permission and encouragement and be invited to let yourself have these recognitions, the recognition of what is presenting through yourself and or the other person. And then it's available. So a lot of this work is inviting, encouraging you to grant yourself permission to have and recognize these things. And that's always becoming a bigger part of my work, and part of why it works so well and gets to the absolute bottom of any undesirable feelings or attitudes that are getting in your way, to a complete and efficient resolution. Any of my clients could certainly attest to that. And I think it's very important for me to make this known, that this is how I'm working, and that is very much to your benefit. You can always reach me through my website, dexsessions.com. That's one word, DEXSESSIONS.com. And I'm sure we'll both be glad you did. I love working with people. I love helping you to feel the way you want to feel, and be the way you really want to be. And in the process, learn to let go of the artificial, self-programmed postures and protective attitudes that you've resorted to for lack of knowing or recognizing how readily you can actually just have and process the festering feelings that you've been struggling to try and deal with or hold down through what I call spiritual digestion, and that they can simply be swallowed up, digested, and no longer presenting. So happy to work with you. I really love what I do, and I take great pleasure in helping you arrive at the way you want to be, and resolving what you really want to resolve, and finding out, wow, I've really done it now. You've really done it now. It's really happened for you. That's what I do. That's what we do together when we have sessions.